Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to a special edition of APTN National News, where we're taking a look at languages. The Alberta Teachers Association has been offering free online learning resources for years. Now there's an impressive collection of learning tools for teachers on Indigenous history and culture. APTN's Chris Stewart checks it out.
I think we should start our day like we always do, and that's with the Cree word of the day. And today's Cree word is Chipai. That's right, Chipai. And that is the Cree word for ghost.
For a decade, Sandra Anderson has been adding to the Alberta Teachers Association's online library with the goal of giving teachers the resources they need to help teach in the classroom. She has helped build an impressive library that links to hundreds of free resources from across Alberta and Canada. And the Indigenous learning section is impressive, linking to teachings of Indigenous peoples, history, and more.
We have guides on Indigenous peoples of Alberta, the Indigenous histories of Canada, as well as foundational knowledge. That's the one that is for teachers that has a lot of information. And it's foundational knowledge across many different topics. So it looks at spirituality, it looks at science, math, literature, all these different aspects of Indigenous culture.
Anderson continues to grow her collection.
I've just been going and finding resources and constantly looking for them, looking at other guides, looking at what other librarians are doing, looking at what Indigenous initiatives there are in education, and connecting to all of those things so that teachers have a really good foundation of which to base their knowledge.
I remember the day walking toward that school with my mother, and it was a silent walk, and I was so afraid. 20 years.
And the online library has been a hit.
We get a lot of response and a lot of usage of those guides, especially right now for the TRC guide for Orange Shirt Day. We are seeing just a ton of usage. So we're probably hit about 12,000 hits this month just on that one guide.
The library can be found at teachers.ab.ca. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Saskatchewan has 3 Cree dialects: Plains, Woodland, and Swampy Cree. And anyone interested in learning Woodlands Cree can download an app to begin their language journey. A public launch of the Cree language app took place in Montreal Lake Cree Nation at the Senator Allen Bird Memorial Gym. Language keepers recorded Woodland Cree words in 46 categories, from animals to health, using Indigenous language revitalization software. Both Latin and syllabic alphabets will be available to help users read and write in the language. The app will launch with 1,150 words and will continue to grow to include stories. Project coordinator Charlotte Ross says the app is a tool for language preservation.
We don't have very many fluent speakers that are like under the age of 50 years old, and that's a general, I guess, finding in a lot of communities. Some communities have very few speakers that are under the age of 60 and under the age of 70 years old. And so the elderly population, we're losing elders, so every day we lose an elder, we lose a whole library of language.
Ross also says while the app is a useful tool for today's generation, practicing the language every day is still essential for language revitalization. The Inuktitut language is available on Google Translate, making it the first Indigenous language on the platform. Inuktitut encompasses the different dialects of the Inuit language spoken in Canada, Greenland, and Alaska. Google Translate consulted with the Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, or ITK. It's already had its own language model with common characters to help write in any of the dialects spoken in northern Canada. That model, combined with first language speakers and artificial intelligence, is what Google based its translation on. Inuktitut has 2 writing systems, one in syllabics and one in the Roman alphabet. Both will be available on the app. ITK welcomed the move, saying this empowers Inuit to interact more fully in the digital world. According to Stats Canada, there are nearly 40,000 Inuktitut speakers in the country. Star Wars New Hope was recently dubbed into Anishinaabemowin, and it made its world debut at a Winnipeg concert hall in November. The event was done in a grand way from beginning to end, where the force was strong with language and culture. With more on that, here's T.R. Wheatley.
From the moment Margaret Simmons and her family entered the venue, this language teacher beamed with pride and joy.
Look at all these people. They're going to listen to it in our language, in Ojibwe. Like, how exciting that is. My heart is just beating.
Her daughter even made ribbon skirts with Star Wars print for the big night.
I just had to create skirts. My sister's a villain, of course, and I get to be Princess Leia. But no, for real, we get to represent the good. There's a lot of teachings that correlate with our teachings, and even our ribbons inspire a message of truth, hope.
From traditional dress to full-blown costumes, many here will forever know Star Wars New Hope as Anigung Migating. There was even a grand entry to start the night off in a good way, and Anishinaabemowin prayers. And even some good old Nish humor from Manitoba Premier Wab Canoe. In the hall, Noah Robinson shows off his lightsaber skills. He led in the dancers with his drum group earlier. After watching the Anishinaabemowin version, he shared words about his solo battle.
Would have loved to sit down and with like my own grandmother and have her like translate it for me herself rather than even reading the subtitles. So it meant a lot. It got a little emotional at one point.
Heartfelt emotions that many seem to have, including Wanda Baker, who said the language itself embodies its own heartbeat.
With the characters there, it was brought it to life, because in the language there's a lot of humor. We laugh at anything and everything.
Blake Anjikaneb is an artist who's made Anishinaabe paintings of Star Wars characters for years.
It's like the story of my life and culture, and I like taking stuff from Star Wars and infusing it with our culture. We always had this movie playing in my house as a kid, so it's I know the whole movie.
Ogimasquest Princess Leia was voiced by Teresa Aishin. Wearing a dress with Ojibwe syllabics that in English means "May the Force be with you," she shares her favorite Anigung Migating line.
I mean, my favorite was the one where, can somebody get this big walking carpet out of my way? But in the language, it's not really translated like that. But it still has the same effect. And that one is like the one I just said. Yeah.
Ava McCons was one of her students who came to support her for this premiere.
She's a great teacher. She taught me lots. She taught me lots of songs. I know a lot more of the language because of her. She taught me different dialects,
making it easy for her to follow along throughout the movie. Behind the scenes, Pat Mugwans helped with the language.
I did the initial translation of the script, and then I brought people from different dialects to come and, try to make sure that the script is understood by as many people as possible.
Something that most appreciated here, as the Anishinaabemowin language can be tricky. A sentiment Dennis Chartrand, the Ojibwe Darth Vader, shares.
It was a constant revision and adaptation, I'll say, to make sure everything fits. And as you've seen in the movie, you had all those actors making it look like they spoke Anishinaabe. That was so cool to see finally.
And it paid off, says Simmons, who also happens to be Chartrand's own Jedi Master of Anishinaabemowin.
Yes, we both did. We taught in the community where he's from, so we've known him from a long, long time.
T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And you can catch it now on APTN Lumi. We're also always looking for your language stories. Here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Social media is another way that people are learning their languages. More on that after the break. Welcome back. An Anishinaabe language instructor in Northern Ontario is bringing her classroom to YouTube. Barbara Nolan, who lives in Garden River First Nation east of Sault Ste. Marie, is a lifelong speaker of Anishinaabemowin and a firm believer in the role of language in cultural preservation. APTN's Mike McDonald brings us that story.
An animated version of language instructor Barbara Nolan greets visitors to her YouTube page, which went online for the first time this past weekend. Producing videos geared toward children has been a long-time goal for Nolan, who's been involved in language teaching since 1973, when she developed the first Native as a Second Language program for elementary schools.
I've had that in my mind for a number of years. You know, I should be producing videos for children and animated so that they're interested, they watch. Eh? So I met Espican in November at a conference that I was asked to speak on land-based learning. And when I went there, him and I started talking, and then he says, I can do that for you.
It's just me doing all the editing. It's just me editing all the sound, doing the recording. My brother does the recording. He does the lights. I do the animatics for the animators, so I send him this. I say, this is how I want it to look, and he pretties it up, remakes everything, redraws everything.
Nolan's daughter Colleen acts as a social media coordinator, travel agent, and overall assistant. She says the aim is to get her mother's videos into daycare facilities and classrooms.
All of the videos are going to be uploaded onto YouTube, as well as future videos. The @Barbara_Nolan, which is also her TikTok, right? So, like she said, for daycare, for childcare, for parents that want to learn.
There's a child in every one of us, eh? Like you probably like to go and play ball with your kid or just act like a kid. Eh? There's that inner child within each and every one of us, you know, that's going to enjoy those, you know, and I've heard adults say, well, I'm going to watch those. Those are so cool.
Nolan continues to deliver virtual and in-person instruction in the region. There are 10 videos in her children's series so far, with episodes being uploaded to YouTube this week and more to come at a later date. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
A woman from Fox Lake Cree Nation in northern Manitoba just launched a resource book for Swampy Cree immersion learning in the classroom. She got the idea and the help from a well-known Anishinaabemowin speaker that also teaches at the University of Manitoba. With more on that story, here's T.R. Wheatley.
Awas Ginasau, Swampy Cree for goldfish, the game these language trainees are engaged in. That's just one interactive example as to how to teach an Anishinaabemowin in the classroom.
These games that we're using, there's a lot of laughter around them. There's competition.
Pat Niguance is a well-known Anishinaabemowin speaker who's published 17 Ojibwe language books through her company, Majanati Inc. She just finished helping Charissa Nolt with the Swampy Cree immersion handbook called Pigisquetan, meaning Let's Talk.
I wanted Pat's book to be translated into Anishinaabemowin because we don't really have that. And when I started off as a learner, there was really no resources for me to learn off of. I had Pocket Cree, and then I had online dictionaries in Y dialect, but nothing really went over those complex grammar patterns and verb conjugations and stuff that happens in the language. So I learned a lot from my Anishinaabemowin learning friends.
Noel says the book came to reality by accident after making a joke to Niguance at a language conference.
Had survival phrases and games, and the language in it was great, the dialogues, I just thought it was fantastic, and I was like, I need this in Anishinaabemowin. So I was bugging her at the conference. I was like, Pat, I need it in a new one. And I didn't think anything of it. And then I got an email a few weeks later from her saying, okay, do it then.
More than a year later, this resource guide has come to life. Nolt calls herself a second-hand learner because she grew up writing and reading the language in school, but didn't speak it. She did as much of the translation that she could on her own, then got her grandma and mom involved.
It was a lot of like dialogues and the teachings and those encouragement phrases that, you know, second language learners, we don't hear a lot naturally.
Niguan says that is what it's all about, to keep the language going, involving families and communities.
And I hope it happens again. I would like to see Dakota Immersion Handbook. That's the next thing I would like to see. They're losing their language too.
This Cree immersion book includes 2 months of lesson plans and activities for interactive learning. Like this game of baseball that even I'd take a swing at. Nearly miss. And recover to take first base. But more importantly, learn in Anishinaabemowin. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
APTN launched its own languages channel around our 25th birthday. More on the new channel after the break. Welcome back. On September 1st, our new channel, APTN Languages, launched. The channel brings 24/7 Indigenous language programming to screens across Turtle Island. Reporter Sierra Bettens brings you all the details.
Some people have a 5-year plan.
My name is Pat Ningwants.
Pat Ningwants, an Anishinaabemowin language keeper and educator, has a 50-year vision. It has to do with the revitalization of Indigenous languages.
5 years just goes like that. 50 years is a better way to look at our time here. Maybe even 100 years. What do we want our language to be 100 years from now?
In that half-century vision, she says broadcasters like APTN have a role to play.
You make movies. Write the scripts in Ojibwe or Cree, Dakota, so you're getting the real language, and train people who are fluent to act while we're still alive.
That's where APTN Languages comes in. In May, the CRTC gave APTN the green light to launch a new Indigenous languages channel. On September 1st, APTN's 4 channels will be consolidated into 2, one with programming in English and French, and another, APTN Languages, completely dedicated to Indigenous languages.
This content is going to be made available to anyone who has a cable subscription across Turtle Island. And that means people who are from the far north, who are living down south in communities, can stay attached and connected to their language and their culture through APTN.
Since its inception in 1999, Omula says APTN has broadcasted programming in 54 Indigenous languages. During the 2010 Winter Olympics, APTN's Rick Harp was tasked with hosting the world's first Indigenous language coverage of the event.
And for the last 17 days, a small army of APTN reporters, producers, cameramen, and technical people have done their part as they've roamed Vancouver covering these Olympic Winter Games.
The network found fluent speakers of 8 different languages and gave them a crash course in broadcasting.
There was just a real air, I think, a real buzz around that space, because we knew we were taking on something that at a scale and an intensity we had never quite done before. And I think we rose to the challenge, and I think we all felt a great sense of pride at having done it, at having made it through.
That paved the way for broadcaster Clarence Iron to call the shots on Hockey Night in Canada in Cree the following decade. Iron, who kept his Plains Cree language even through residential school, said the opportunity fulfilled a lifelong dream.
When you hear somebody speak your own language, it's alive. There's something there. It's hard to describe, but when you start listening to people that speak your own language, things starts happening. It's very amazing.
Now, in APTN's 25th year, Indigenous language programming will find a 24/7 home on APTN Languages.
This September, APTN is launching APTN Languages, a brand new channel dedicated to programs in Indigenous languages.
The channel's September schedule will bring programming in 18 Indigenous languages. The schedule begins with Atlantic region languages like Mi'kmaq, then heads north with programming in Innu and Inuktitut. It continues to the prairies with Anishinaabemowin, Cree, and Dene, and ends with West Coast languages like Salishan. The debut schedule includes Ananas Tent, a children's series about Inuit culture, which will air in Inuktitut. Producer Louise Flaherty says the show has been vital in exposing children to Inuktitut and Inuit culture.
Very important for APTN to air Indigenous languages and Inuktitut, because you can, once you take a film and it's there forever, right? Even as a producer, creator, when we pass on, that content is still there.
On October 13th, the Anishinaabemowin dub of Star Wars: A New Hope will premiere on APTN Languages. Ningwans, the lead translator on the film, hopes to see more original language content on the channel, a goal Omulus shares.
So rather than just versioning programs in Indigenous languages, where we want to go is producing programs in Indigenous languages with speakers doing the roles from beginning to end.
As language keepers like Ningwans nurture more fluent speakers, she says broadcasters like APTN Languages can help immortalize the language for future generations.
Train those who are learning the language to sound very much like us while they're acting, so that, because that's going to be what's going to be heard 50 years from now, 100 years from now.
APTN Languages launches on September 1st on cable and satellite services across the country. Check with your TV provider to find out how you can tune in. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that is all the time we have for this special edition of your APTN National News. Of course, for news anytime and the very latest, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.